Everybody, and welcome for another World of Warship Blitz loadout video. This time we are looking what I would describe as the sniper cruisers. So these are the long range cruisers, so that's the Japanese line, the Russian line and the French line. And what we'll do is we'll go through and show the loadout. So the first ship I have is probably, I think, my only remaining tier 4 ship, the Yubari, which I won through some sort of an event. So I've taken cruiser modification. I generally am a guns person, so improving torpedoes, yeah, that's nice, but I'm always after traverse speed. So I've gone and focused on the cruiser modernisation. And for the equipment itself, there's quite limited options at tier 4. So at this point I've taken the main battery modification, obviously for the turret rotation. You'll see that's a pretty good theme if you saw my last video. I've taken acceleration for this one because it is quite a small ship, and you know, it helps to sort of get off the gun at the start of matches. It's because it's a tier 4 ship, it's not something I've put a lot of thought into. And the steering gear modification, so propulsion modification 1 for acceleration, and this is the better steering gear modification number 2, which seems to provide better performance. So that's the Yubari. The Furataka is well, it's an interesting ship, and as you can see from the loadouts, I'll go through the supplies to start with. It's a fairly standard set of supplies for me, which is high-grade coal for concealment, improved fuel rations, and improved crew rations for reload, and refined diesel for performance. And I doubt there'll be much variation as we go through that. Perhaps the high-grade ore may change on some of the ships where concealment is so bad that I don't really feel the need to try and muck around with it. What I have here is again acceleration. This is probably the last of the Japanese light cruisers, which means it's nifty and actually nifty enough to be able to take capture zones, so I've given it acceleration. It's also good for dodging, and I've given it the steering gear modification too. So the defence on the ship is not to be hit. Here I've taken the aiming system modification because it does have good torpedo tubes. So, and I didn't have a problem with the gun rotation, so I thought I'd take this and help the torpedo tubes out a little bit. For its elite bonus, fairly standard for me is where you can improve the main battery. I do. The other one has the same traverse speed, but this gives me reload and 2% hit points. Maybe that's a good bet, but for me, I prefer the idea of firing those guns just that little bit more often. I don't have the tier 6, the Aoba, because I didn't enjoy it. Although perhaps I'll buy it back like the New York. But the tier 7 is the Miyoko. You can see the supplies are the same as pretty much for pretty much all my destroyers and cruisers. And if we go to the equipment, those of you that have seen my other video around the British and the German cruisers will recognise this. It's the same setup I have for the Leander or the Fiji or the Belfast. Main battery modification 1 for traverse speed, steering gear modification 1 for manoeuvrability, and concealment modification, which does improve the ship. The ship has quite bad concealment normally, but this 10% improvement plus the 3% from the high-grade coal means that it's got a surface detection of just over 7 kilometres, which is much improved. And in the game, it means that you're not that first ship targeted by all those battleships. And as you can see, the torpedo range is just slightly longer than its detection range. And although it's not really a stealth torpedo ship, it's good if you can get the torpedoes in the water. If you have an opportunity and you can take it, it's good to get those torpedoes in the water and have them underway before the detection. Especially if you're driving towards it, you can set it up so that the torpedoes are driving in and you're driving in, because they won't expect the torpedoes to be on their way. So those are the Japanese cruisers. The Russian cruisers, I have a tier 5, the Krashen Krim, which has the which doesn't have any supplies. It's a ship that I won, and Although I've got a good win rate in it, I don't really enjoy it that much because of, I like the Okhotnik because of the challenge. This has a good win rate, so it doesn't have a challenge, but it's not fun to play either. Main battery modification 1 for traverse, steering gear modification 1 for performance, and propulsion modification 2 to try and make it slightly more useful from a capping perspective, I suppose. But it is a weak ship, so yeah, it's pretty much a crapshoot, those. I've sold my Tier 5 Kirov because I needed the port slot. So I have the Tier 6 Bajoni, and this for me is a fairly standard build. All the same supplies. The equipment, very much the same as for the Leander or the Miyoko, which is the main battery modification, the steering gear modification, and the concealment modification. To provide as good a concealment as this ship can get, which is about 8 kilometres. It is a very long range ship, but that concealment modification does help. So when you're firing your guns, sure, you're not concealed, but if you have to change position, or when you're positioning at the start of the game, I do find that I don't really miss much else because it's such a long range ship. I don't need the traverse because it's such a long range ship. I generally don't get slammed by torpedoes all that often. So I've taken the concealment because there's not really much call for much else. And as for its bonus, I took this main battery firing range. It already started out with long range. It's got very, very long range. And if I ever bought historical camo, that would be another 4% range, making it an extremely long range ship. We'll find its guns. The range is 11, nearly 12 kilometres. The shores is basically the Bajoni with an extra turret down the back. I haven't selected the elite bonus. I like the traverse and the reload time, and I like the range, and I'm working out which I'd like more. No rush. It seems to do fairly well on its own. Here I've gone for something a bit different, and maybe I need to go back with the Bajoni because I've realised that the concealment modification probably isn't providing me the best bang for the buck. So I've taken the higher performance steering gear modification 2, the main battery modification so I can switch targets rather than for knife fighting. And what I've taken here is the deck protection modification, and it's because I'd sort of got into a bit of a rut with my equipment choices. And I get spend a lot of time with counter battery fire, getting set on fire. So I may go back to the Bajoni and do exactly the same thing with that. Not that I play the Bajoni much anymore. I've sort of kept the ship for interest purposes. So yeah, so that's probably quite a good little loadout for a sniper ship like this. It's good at setting fires and it's a bit fire resistant. And maybe that to me means that I've still got that choice of that elite bonus to make. Now these two ships I have, the French ships, I have the Premium de Grasse and I have the line La Glaçonnière. And what I've done, let's take this one. I've removed some of the supplies because I thought I could save cost, but then, it doesn't seem to make much difference. I probably just put them back in at some point. For the armory, what I've taken is I've taken pretty much standard for me, elite gun operator. Where there's something to improve the guns, I've taken it. And for the ship itself, I've taken main battery reload time, and that's because the ship does spend a lot of time firing at long ranges, and as a result, it doesn't get hit that much. Although I do tend to, if you see me in battle with it, I do sometimes tend to overextend, but the theory is that it shouldn't get hit that much. So with the elite bonus 3%, the rations 3%, which I should buy back, and the main battery reload 5%, it means that it's getting these fire starter shells off a little bit quicker each time. It's not manoeuvrable because it's a French ship, and it's not strong because it's a French ship, and maybe I need to play it a bit more and work out whether or not I should be swapping this around to be more like the Shores with the deck protection, or not, the deck protection isn't available, so that's nice and easy. No, I won't be swapping it around. So that's sort of a bit of an experiment. De Grasse is probably more my standard. Because I don't have a problem, let me just go find out what the elite bonus is. Because I get a little bit of traverse, Oh, hello. I've gone for that's interesting for me. I've gone for reload and traverse. But between that and this traverse, which it gives me 17%, I don't have any problems with it. It's comfortable enough to play. I don't feel like I'm waiting for the guns. Those torpedoes, it only has one set of torpedo tubes, but they're pretty damn good torpedoes, good long range things. But sometimes when you end up in a situation where you are in a drive-by, then having that extra bit of speed on the torpedo tubes can help. And I've definitely gone for the steering gear modification 1 and 2, and this is probably more an historical build for me when I didn't know how to use the ships, and I tended to get closer in with them. So the de Grasse I got long before I got the other Tier 6 French cruiser, and this is probably more of an historical build for me, where I tried to make them into more brawlers than they were, and my win rate shows a result of that experimentation. Anyway, that is the loadout for what I would describe as the sniper cruiser line. Next up will be the US cruiser line, which gets its own video, and then I'll move on to battleships and 2 carriers. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.